following is a special presentation of HBO Sports.
Baseball connects American males with each other, not only through bleacher friendships and neighbor loyalties, but most importantly through generations. You learn your first lesson of the rainbow arc all living makes, but that baseball exaggerates. For when you're in the 6th grade, the rook has fuzz on his face and throws to the wrong base. Before you leave junior high, he is a seasoned regular, the body filled out, his jowl ripples with tobacco. When you graduate from high school, he's a grizzled veteran, even if you are not certain what grizzled means. In a few years, the green shoot becomes the withered stalk, and you learn the hill all beings travel by.
There was a time in baseball when there were only 8 teams in each major league. They played an orderly, balanced schedule, visiting each city 4 times. A trip out west meant St. Louis or Chicago. There was a comfortable rhythm to the season. When they referred to the Giants, it was the New York Giants. The Dodgers were a Brooklyn institution, seemingly forever. There was an American League team in St. Louis and a National League one in Boston. That time is gone now. But it's been said one reason baseball is so gripping to the American imagination is that certain eras inevitably evoke certain images. Perhaps none more so than the years from the end of the Depression through World War II and into the 1950s. It was a time when baseball was the focal point of sports in our society. A time when baseball was still just a game, a familiar game, which in a changing world somehow reassured us with its return every year on the warm winds of spring. Poet Donald Hall.
My heart starts to sing like a bird. I feel my wings stretch out and warm air coming. Spring is the hope of the earth, and baseball is the same hope, the beginning of it. It's wonderful. It's a ritual. It's practically magic, like an old mystery religion.
Spring always has special meaning for the baseball romantic. But for the baseball player of the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, spring was anything but an idyllic time of year. In the months before the coming season, a player had to prove to management that he hadn't slow to step over the winner in a game that didn't pamper its players. St. Louis Cardinal, Enos Slaughter.
They gave me my cap, my belt, top and bottom, and red socks. You bought your own sweat socks. You bought your own jockey straps. You bought your own sweatshirts, and you had to see that they got laundry. You even down had to pay for your own sandwich between double headers. Every year, I went to spring training. They had some young outfield hit 340, 350. They were going to take my job. Well, you know, they want to get to the big leagues also. Somebody's going to take my job. I'm still hitting 300, driving in close to 100 runs every year, and I knew I had to bear down to hold my job. And I went to spring training every year thinking that I had to make my job.
Pitcher, Eldon Ocker.
We had no assurance of anything. They could release us anytime they wanted to. And we didn't have much to say about it. We just signed a 4-page contract, and everybody signed it. Didn't make a difference who you were, and you signed it. And they could trade you. They could do anything to you until you were in the major leagues 10 years. You were just like an automobile. They could get rid of you anytime they wanted to get a new one.
It's a wonderful day. Play ball. Let's get the game underway.
Hey, you with the hot dogs, two over here.
There's that peanut vendor and the guy with all the beer.
Strike one.
Your favorite players at bat.
Strike two.
You squirm and fuss with your hat.
And then you see him tag one right on the nose.
And then you watch it going.
There it goes. What are we waiting for?
Let's get the game underway.
What are we waiting for?
It's a wonderful day.
Let's start the game. Play ball.
Accuracy and speed, the practiced eye and hefty arm. The mind to take in and readjust to the unexpected. The possession of more than one talent. And the willingness to work in harness without special orders. These are the American virtues that shine in baseball. It is graphic and choreographic. Baseball is a kind of collective chess with arms and legs in full play under sunlight.
When the major leagues were made up of just 16 teams, the game was in many ways heartless and mean. Spots on a roster had to be earned every year, and there was hardly a player to be found who didn't take his job seriously. Chicago Cub, Billy Herman.
The only thing we had in our mind was to win. Any way we could, we'd play to win. And if that wasn't good enough, well, you go back home, get a lunch pail, and go to work. Now, if they didn't play hard, you didn't have, he wouldn't have a friend on the club, and he wouldn't be there long. If you were on first base and the batter hit a ground ball, you had to take that runner out. If you didn't take that runner out, well, you'd come on the bench and you'd almost have to fight some of your teammates. The biggest mistake I ever made in the major leagues was my first time at bat. I got a base hit. The next time up, I got hit right in the head.
Enos Slaughter.
If you can't get brushed back or get knocked back once in a while, you got no business in this game. Every time the Cardinal and Dodgers played, if 2 or 3 guys didn't get knocked down, it's not a Cardinal and Dodger game. They'd knock me down. I knew every pitch in the league that knocked me down and hit one me in the middle of the back. I didn't forget them. If they ever covered first, I'd try to cut the legs off. It didn't bother me at all.
Slaughter no doubt inherited some of his swagger from his Cardinal predecessors, the original Gas House Gang. A collection of fast-talking, free-spirited players like Leo DeRocher, who never ducked a fight and always played hard. In the 30s, the Gas House Gang Cardinals were not only baseball's best team, but also the most colorful. Witness Pepper Martin in 1937, showing off his legendary juggling act. Entertaining came naturally to the Gas House Gang. Keeping clean, however, was another matter. New York Yankee Tommy Henrik.
Oh, I saw Frankie Fish in New Orleans in '36 when they were the real Gas House Gang with Pepper Martin. And they came around there, most of them needed a shave, and every one of them had a dirty uniform on. I said, what a bunch of bums. Now, these are really the Gas House Gang.
Immaculate uniforms meant little to men with rowdy reputations. Winning, however, meant everything. Never was the Cardinals' raucous, hell-bent style of play more evident than in their 1934 World Series appearance against the Detroit Tigers. Cardinal infielder Burgess Whitehead.
Doc Weaver was our trainer when I was a member of the St. Louis Cardinals. He brought a camera into the dugout during the '34 World Series and made a lot of pictures of different plays and of the different players. Detroit was such a wild baseball city then. We had to have security guards, you might call them, to stand at the door of the Book Cadillac Hotel in Detroit so we could get in. The people were just crowded around the hotel. The Gas House Gang was the greatest baseball club I ever saw. They thought they could beat any ball club, and they just about could, too. Of course, we had some characters on that club, like Pepper Martin, one of the hustlingest ball players I ever saw. Dizzy Dean and Leo Durocher, one of the greatest shortstops I ever played alongside. When they got on that ball field, they played baseball. I mean, they played it to the hilt, too. And when they slid hard, and there was no good fellowship between them and the opposition. They were just good, tough ball players. That was a tough series. It was a hard-fought series, and the players hustled so hard. It was because of the depression, and they wanted that winner's share. The series went 7 games, and the deciding game, the 7th game, Dizzy Dean beats Eldon Alker 11-0. It enabled me to help my family. My father had kind of tough luck during the Depression, and that's when we got $6,800. But I don't know, that $6,800 was mighty good.
I suppose there must be some item that an American boy might treasure more fiercely than a Louisville slugger with his own signature on it. But I can't think of one. For all of us who grew up on sandlots and playgrounds, gripping Louisville sluggers bearing the autographs of Major League stars, the thought of owning one with our name on the barrel is almost too much to comprehend.
All baseball players enter the field of play with the same tools: a bat, a ball, and a glove. The bat helps keep the batter alive, but when the ball is hit, it's the glove that becomes most important. That might explain why players become so attached to the single piece of equipment they can spend an entire career with. Infielder Bill Werber.
The glove that I used was a little bit larger than my hand. I had my gloves all made out of the belly of the cow because it was soft. Didn't need a lot of breaking in, but they weren't a large glove. I never dropped any balls, but you could maneuver them.
Perhaps the most interesting fact about gloves in the 30s and 40s was what happened to them between innings. Rather than take their gloves into the dugout after the third out was made, the fielders of the day simply left their gloves on the field and retrieved them on their way out to their positions. It was a practice that held true until the mid-50s. Author, Robert Creamer.
You see a play where a shortstop would end the inning by making a catch of a line drive. He'd catch the ball, flip the ball to an umpire, and throw the glove up in the air like that. It would sort of spin, and it would land on the field out there. And it was such a pretty thing to see. When guys trying out the field and bending down and picking up their glove and taking it again. It's antique.
Antique, too, were the uniforms. Perhaps the most identifiable feature of baseball's golden age. Loose-fitting and made of heavy wool, a father might have been proud to show off the colorful uniforms of the day, but they weren't exactly designed with comfort in mind. Brooklyn Dodger, Duke Snider.
I mean, you go into St. Louis, Cincinnati in the summertime, and it's a hot, humid day, and you get those wool uniforms, you start perspiring and get those things wet, and they pick up some weight. All of a sudden, you're carrying 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds extra along with you. As baggy as they weren't all that comfortable, but we didn't know any better. So we were comfortable.
Without a doubt, baseball's most recognizable uniform has always belonged to the New York Yankees. Unending years of sartorial splendor in pinstripes. Other teams, however, frequently change their look. For instance, in spring training before the 1942 season, the New York Giants gathered around their player-manager Mel Ott, wearing uniforms during the war that were a patriotic red, white, and blue. The pre-World War II Pittsburgh Pirates wore black and red, while during the same era, the Philadelphia Phillies uniforms were predominantly blue. Whether they have remained the same over the years or changed a great deal, uniforms, like the players who wear them, give us the means to savor the game's past. Author, Donald Honig.
A team can bring back an era. A player can recreate the sense of a year. Baseball freezes these moments and holds them until you want to think about them. And then they're released again in all their youthful energy and vitality as they were. Ball players never age in memory. They're always young.
Teams, however, do disappear, or more accurately, change locations or names. And the nostalgia that their uniforms evoke is part of what we have left to remember them by.
For a few hours, for a summer, we think we know them. These young men in three-colored caps playing the game of boyhood brief in our eyes. Do they play for us, or are they performing the ancient demands of their decorated bodies? They wear their names on their backs, but they wear costumes designed a century past, of gentlemen meeting of a Sunday on the grass.
For a period of 4 seasons, from 1942 through 1945, World War II affected baseball in pretty much the same manner it affected everyday life. The game went on, but it couldn't possibly be the same. Not with constant reminders at ballparks around America that we were indeed at war. There were even those who considered suspending baseball, but, as Eldon Auker remembers, the most influential and important American was not among them.
President Roosevelt wanted professional baseball to continue, and the reason for it was to keep up the morale of the people during the war. He said his baseball was such an American pastime. He said for us to quit baseball wouldn't be right, to impress upon all owners and all players that they should continue and not quit just because war started. And I think that that was an expression of how the people felt in those days about baseball.
New York Yankee Tommy Henrik.
A lot of the best ball players went into the service. So it's a doggone cinch. Each team, the brand of ball they're playing is going to be a little inferior to what they had before the Stars left.
In fact, with most of baseball's best players at war, the previously inept St. Louis Browns won their first and only American League pennant in 1944. Attendance during the war years suffered too, and in an effort to encourage more fans to attend games, team owners came up with several outlandish contests involving players, the winners receiving no more than a $100 war bond. After the war, the promotions continued, some with celebrities from outside baseball like Jesse Owens, who raced and barely beat George Case of the Cleveland Indians in 1946. In the early 50s, stars like Abbott and Costello would make occasional appearances at ballparks. Here, they're at a Boston Braves game, answering the question of, who's on first? In the 30s and 40s, it was not unusual to see players or coaches participate in comedy sketches for the newsreels. In this case, the foil is Benny Bengal of the Washington Senators. Comedy and baseball have had a long and entertaining partnership. Former pitcher Al Shack, who was known as the Clown Prince of Baseball, appeared at 25 World Series, including the 1940 series at Tiger Stadium. When Shack retired in the early 50s, it was Max Patkin who inherited the title of Clown Prince. Amazingly, Patkin performed not only before the game, but during it as a legitimate first base coach. Max Patkin.
When I do my routine, I try to do it between pitches. I usually have between 10 and 15 seconds. You'd be surprised what 10 seconds means to a Max Patkin on the coaching line. So it gives me a chance to go through that goofy thing of motion with my neck, my arms, my legs, just to make out I'm giving a sign to the batter. That would give me just enough time. All I needed was 8 to 10 seconds. Bing, 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 bum, boom, ba, left. And, you know, and then when I looked at those days, I'm telling you, I was the dumbest looking thing you ever saw in that coaching line.
Strike one. Strike two. Strike one. Strike two. Strike three, and you're out. Play ball, you all. Play ball, you all.
We've just begun.
Why do you stall?
Hit it in the stand.
Play ball, you all.
Give us one home run.
You're holding up the game.
Never argue with the ump. Play it smart, don't be a chump. For we know without a doubt, man, that ump will put you out.
Play ball, you all.
Whoop-de-doo-dee-doo.
Why do you stall?
Whoop-de-doo-dee-doo.
Play ball, you all. We came to see the game.
Before the 1950s, teams traveled to and from games by train, bringing them together, but with a lifestyle that was far from glamorous. Enos Slaughter.
We'd play a doubleheader in St. Louis. I'd lose 16-pound doubleheader. We'd rush to the railroad station, jump the train. Time we got over into Indiana, through Illinois, the air conditioning go off. Monday morning, we'd get up, and they'd have Ricky would have an exhibition someplace out in Ohio, Indiana. They'd pull our Pullman cars off to the side. We'd get out and play an exhibition game. Then we'd get back on the train. Next morning, you wake up going around Horseshoe Curve in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and pull into Philadelphia and play that night.
St. Louis Cardinal, Whitey Kurowski.
Many times we'd have those 18, 24-hour trips on a train. Well, before we'd hit the sack, we'd get back in a club car or someplace in the men's room, and all of us, we'd be talking about the ball game. To us, we were just one big happy family. Doubtless, there are better places to spend summer days, summer nights, than in ballparks. Doubtless. Nevertheless, decades after a person has stopped collecting bubblegum cards, he can still discover himself collecting ballparks. And not just the stadiums, but their surrounding neighborhoods, their smells, their special seasons and moods. Quaint? Sure. Beautiful? Not really. However, when the sun is bright and the air crisp and your seat seems closer to the diamond than the on-deck hitter, all is forgiven.
In the days before television, the only way a person could see a baseball game was to come to the stadium. There was perhaps no greater feeling than spending an afternoon at the ballpark. Poet Donald Hall.
Walking through the crowds into that great small old stadium, and there they were in the flesh. I can see them now in their baggy old pants. The players whom I had heard about, of whom I'd seen photographs, but there they were really walking around, live people, and the absolute enchantment and enthrallment of the tension of starting the game, play ball.
Author Donald Honig.
When you went out to the ball game, it was someplace special, and these guys were something special to you, and you really focused on them because you didn't see them anywhere else. All the rest of the time and all winter, you talked about them and argued about them with your friends, and then that special occasion when you went out, your father took your older brother, or you were a young teenager, and you went out yourself, and you're still very impressionable, and you're able to watch these guys up close. It made quite an impact. The PA system. The voice of God, is coming down. Who the hell ever announced lineups? We all played on the sandlots. And suddenly this voice comes, reading the lineup, it's coming down from the heavens. This is an incredible thing, the first time. It was 1941. I was just 10 years old. And there was a Dodger Cardinal game, and we came up the ramp heading for the cheap seats. And for a moment I had a glimpse of the field, and standing up and outside the dugout and looking right at me was Johnny Mize. Big John Mize of the St. Louis Cardinals. And it just struck me. I said to my brothers, Johnny Mize. My brother got all excited. It hit you all at once.
Like nearly all of the pre-expansion ballparks, Boston's Fenway Park was built in several stages. In fact, Fenway's most recognizable feature, the Green Monster, wasn't erected until the park was more than 20 years old. And in the 30s and 40s, green paint took a back seat to advertisements. There was even a time when Chicago's Wrigley Field didn't have its signature ivy on the walls, or its famous outfield bleachers. In 1937, temporary stands could be seen in right field, but full construction of the bleachers didn't begin until midway through the 1938 season. The same year, the ivy was planted. Each of the grand old ballparks was unique in its appearance, but the meaning they had to those who went there was the same. Author Ray Robinson.
The stands looked enormous. The outfielders who were cavorting in the outfield looked to be, miles away from you. And this cavernous cathedral that you went to, is enormous. And you're a little boy, and everything looked so large and bigger than life in your mind's eye.
I want to go to the ball game.
Donald Hall.
American men, not all of us, but a great many of us, think back to baseball in connection with our fathers, maybe with our grandfathers, with uncles, with people who played particular games sometimes, but also people with whom we went to particular games, or people we played catch with. There is something historical about baseball.
Come on and root for the home team with a hip, 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 hooray. Let's sit with the boys and we'll make lots of noise at the baseball game. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and...
You walk into the portals and you look down beneath you, you see that green grass, as I hope and wish and cherish in my conservative way, the grass field shining in front of you, and you are not just back in time, but you are outside of time. We have something that separates itself out from our duration. For one island there, we are 62 years old, we are 12 years old, we are 40 years old, and the game exists in some island outside of time, some eternal present, which is a kind of corridor into eternity.
The one ballpark that stood out in terms of its size and baseball significance was the old Yankee Stadium. Opened in 1923, it was the most dramatic of three ballparks within the boundaries of New York City. Just across the river from Yankee Stadium stood the Polo Grounds. Robert Creamer.
I was, hundreds of miles from home, and I sat in this sort of empty room, maybe 15 guys scattered around, listening to the radio, and I just felt so far away from baseball. I really felt lonesome. And a big sergeant came in, big top sergeant, and he had a cigar. He was sitting a few feet away from me, and the cigar smoke floated over to where I was, and I thought of the Polo Grounds. It just came back to me in a wave, this marvelous feeling that I was at a ballpark all of a sudden because of that stinking cigar.
Crazy about a ball game ever since I can recall. Crazy about a ball game ever since I can recall. So you find me in the bleachers when the umpire yells, "Play ball!" I'm rooting for the home team, rooting for them win or lose. I'm rooting for the home team, rooting for them win or lose. So I'm happy when they win one, when they lose, I get those blues. In every town and city, yes, any place you name, there's nothing fills the fans like a baseball game. Crazy about a ball game.
The third stadium in New York was Brooklyn's Ebbets Field. Like nearly all of the ballparks of its day, Ebbets Field had some very interesting physical features, largely because it was built within the confines of its surrounding neighborhood. But what was really unique about Ebbets Field was the relationship between the Dodgers, their fans, and their ballpark. Dodger announcer Red Barber.
Ebbets Field was typically Brooklyn. It belonged to Brooklyn. The fans felt it was theirs. They were close to the players. They felt the players were not only theirs, they felt they were their children. They could jeer at them and call them bums, but nobody else had better do it. No outsider had better do it, and certainly no giant fan had better come into Ebbets Field and do it. And the borough of Brooklyn lived and died with that ball club. When the Dodgers lost an afternoon game, there were a lot of cold suppers. They didn't get eaten.
Dodger fans were for the most part blue-collar. Still, at the 1952 World Series, it was not unusual to see someone like Humphrey Bogart at Ebbets Field, rooting for the Dodgers along with everyone else, even Lauren Bacall. In New York, picking a team to root for took on special meaning. Robert Creamer.
You'd say to somebody, what are you, a Dodger fan, Giant fan? I mean, it was identification. Are you Catholic, Protestant, Jewish? You're a Giant fan, Dodger fan, Yankee fan? It was a thing, and that's what you were. And it was part of your life.
It was also part of a ball player's life. Infielder Bill Werber.
When we were at Boston, we represented the town of Boston, and we loved Boston. When I was playing with Cincinnati, we were winning pennants there. We all, right down to the last man, wanted to win for the people in Cincinnati. And when we won championships and won the World Series, why, we were just delighted that we could do something for those good people.
Where's Babe Ruth, the king of SWAT, who rocked the heavens with his blows? Grabowski, Pennock, and Malone. Mother of mercy, where are those? Where's the swagger? Where's the strut? Where's the style that makes the hitter? Where's the pitcher's swan-like motion? What in God's name turned life bitter? Is there a heaven with rainbow flags, silver trophies hung on walls, a horseshoe grandstand, mobs of fans, webbed gloves, and official balls? Where's Tony Push-Em-Up Lazzari, the quickest man that ever played? Where's the gang that raised the roof in the house that Colonel Rupert made?
In 1938, the Chicago Cubs won the National League pennant, and the city responded by saluting its champions in a pre-World Series parade. This film of the parade and of the subsequent World Series is believed to provide the oldest existing color images of a World Series, taken just a few years after 16mm color film was available to the public.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, you said it. This is the first game of the 1938 World Series. This is George Hicks speaking for the National Broadcasting Company at Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois.
Quite a crowd milling down around the box there near the Yankees dugout where sits Judge Landis this afternoon. You may be interested in some of the home run records of these Yankees.
Comes swinging along behind them, and behind them comes the entire squad of the Chicago Cubs, dressed in their home team uniforms, white with blue stripes.
Cubs pitcher Clay Bryant.
I faced good hitters in the National League before we played the Yankees in the World Series. So I wasn't all too much about the Yankees. I know we read about them and knew about Dickey, Gehrig, and Gordon, Crissetti, and Ruff, and Selkirk, and DiMaggio, and Hendricks. But we knew about them. But we figured, and all the pitching staff, and I think the whole ball club figured we could beat them. I saw the lineup, and sure, I looked at them, and I knew they were good, but I will say this. After the series is over, they're the greatest club I've seen in baseball. Yeah, well, like Rip Collins says, we come, we saw, and we went home after 4 straight.
Yankee right fielder Tommy Henrich played on the 38 team, which featured a young Joe DiMaggio, as well as fellow Hall of Famers Lefty Gomez and Bill Dickey, and an aging Lou Gehrig.
The 1938 Yankees were the type of team that came out every day to beat you. And that's the way McCarthy wanted his ball players to act. He wanted professionalism out of his ball players. Somebody was saying, McCarthy, you like Joe Gordon, don't you? He says, I sure do. He says, why do you like him? He says, I'll show you why. Hey, Joe, come over here. He says, what's your batting average? Gordon says, I don't know. So what's your fielding average? He says, I don't know. Okay, Joe. And he walks away, and McCarthy says, that's what I like. All he does is come to beat you. Okay? Multiply that by 9. That's a tough outfit to beat. My greatest feeling was getting dressed in the Yankee uniform because I knew I was with a bunch of pros. That was my thrill. I said, this is a ball club.
From 1936 through 1939, the Yankees won 4 straight championships. Author, Donald Honig.
I think that was the team that established what is the Yankees' so-called corporate image. Businesslike, of intense sobriety, no nonsense. They were expected to win. They went out there to win. And Gehrig, I think, was the first one to establish this image, being extremely serious in all business on the baseball field.
The quality of play that Lou Gehrig brought to the Yankees was matched only by the quality of his person. Gehrig was the magnificent Yankee, and his departure under tragic circumstances in 1939 might have ruined a lesser team. The Yanks, however, never slipped in stature nor standing, a great deal of which had to do with the incredible talents of Joe DiMaggio, the man who carried the Yankee torch after Gehrig. Donald Honig.
This was the ultimate ball player, not only for talent, but for style and grace. This was the epitome of celestial craftsmanship in a ball player. DiMaggio has, to this day, a mystique. And like most mistakes, it's unexplainable. Is he shy? Is he aloof? Is he a snob? What is he? To the fan, it never really mattered, because there was Joe out on the ball field.
Author, Robert Creamer.
When Berra was a rookie, he hit a pop fly and jogged down to first base. And I think the ball was dropped, and he had to scurry to get to where he was going, and DiMaggio gave him that cold look. And apparently when DiMaggio looked at people coldly, they just shriveled. He had a sense of command, an aura of being, majestic almost. He was the king.
DiMaggio's Yankees had many rivals, but perhaps none drove them to excel as much as the Boston Red Sox, a team with 5 future Hall of Famers in its lineup in the early 1940s. Tommy Henrich.
It was something special. It was absolutely something special. For years, Red Sox Yankees. Oh, boy. It's a highlight of the year. What made it special was the talent on both sides. We knew we had a good ball club. We got DiMaggio on our side. They got Williams. They got Bobby Dorr. We got Joe Gordon. They had Joe Cronin, who could hit with anybody. Jimmy Fox. Gee, you think you're not going to fear those birds? And we went up against them, and they were some tremendous battles. Oh, and Bobby Dorr says, why didn't we win? Didn't we have a good ball club? I says, you scared us to death, Bobby. Sure you had a good ball club. Why didn't we win? I says, I don't know. I think the owner liked you more than our owners liked us. I says, I used to walk through your parking lot out there, and I says, most all of the things in there were Cadillacs. I says, we had to bear down more for ours.
After the war, the Red Sox often approached greatness, but never attained their ultimate goal of winning the World Series. They won the pennant in '46, but lost the series to the Cardinals in 7 games. In '48, the Indians beat them in a playoff, and in '49, they fell to the rival Yanks on the last day of the season. Poet, Donald Hall.
There is surely something in the image of the Red Sox in particular that has to do with not mere defeat, but glorious defeat, or almost making it, or the whole series of crucial moments. And I think that defeats are talked about more, and moments of losing it, than any moments of victory.
More than any other single player, it was Ted Williams who epitomized the Red Sox persona.
He was our Achilles, our reluctant warrior, our sullen genius. And he could be counted on always to be doer and difficult and superb. Yes, he's indelibly Boston. One of the portions of my memory of baseball, which is purest and most joyous, is rehearsing in my mind the swing of Ted Williams. He coiled on himself like a barber pole turning around. He had that compact swing that was totally efficient, strong, and that looked loose and graceful, although it was so compact and efficient. It was a wonderful thing to see. I can see it in my head as often as I like.
How dear to my heart was the old-fashioned batter, who scattered line drives from the spring to the fall. He did not resemble the up-to-date batter who swings from his heels and misses the ball. The up-to-date batter I'm not very strong for. He shatters the ozone with all of his might, and that is the reason I hanker and long for those who double to left and triple to right. The old-fashioned batter, the eagle-eyed batter, the thinking man's batter, who tripled to right.
The great men of baseball are at the very heart of the game. They are the ones who set the standards, the ones who created the memories. They take us to different heights. They allow us to dream. Before 1947, everyone affiliated with baseball in any capacity, every player, every coach, every manager, every owner, shared at least one common denominator: the color of their skin. Poet Donald Hall.
The game that I grew up with was a white game. And it is appalling, of course, to think back and realize that as I was growing up, it was a white game and I didn't notice. I didn't object. I had no notion. When we look back to that injustice, we're looking back to American history, not the parts of it that we're proudest of, but it's part of our social history, part of our cultural history. That terrible split, and then the commencement of healing of that wound with Jackie Robinson.
Brooklyn Dodger, Don Newcomb.
Even though I didn't have a Joe DiMaggio or Ted Williams or Babe Ruth as an idol, I developed an idol. His name was Jackie Robinson. It was just such a phenomenal era. We wondered whether or not it would ever happen. And Jackie said, I'm going to make it happen. He would say that many, many times. I'm going to make it happen. They're not going to be able to stop me. I had no idea where my life would go. I had no idea that I'd ever be a part of history.
Soon after Robinson, new heroes like Roy Campanella would emerge. Gradually, as the landscape of the game changed, baseball became integrated. Now, it was truly a national pastime. The 50s saw the arrival of many of the game's greatest players, some who would go on to rewrite baseball's record book. The inevitable breaking of the color barrier also allowed for some of the older, established stars of the Negro Leagues, like Satchel Paige, to finally pitch in the major leagues. It wasn't something that erased the years of injustice. It only served to remind us of what we missed. America is a country which encourages and welcomes change. Through the years, sometimes on its own, or sometimes with a little push, baseball was able to accept and incorporate some of those changes into the fabric of the game. Some improved it. Others made us long for the game we used to know. But the important thing to remember is that baseball was just living up to its moniker as the American pastime. Ultimately, when the population began to shift out west, so too did baseball. The Braves moved to Milwaukee. The Dodgers and Giants left New York. That signaled the beginning of new chapters in the history of the game. But sadly, it also meant the end of certain others. Author Lawrence Ritter.
When you're abandoned, I think you're living in a dream world if you continue after the abandonment to glorify the one that left you. It's sort of self-defeating, not to mention quite irrational. My team left. I don't have any romanticism left. I don't have a team anymore. I was a Giant fan. There aren't any New York Giants anymore.
There might not be any New York Giants anymore, or St. Louis Browns, or Washington Senators. The days of watching Ted Williams in left are long over, and the wondrous Willie Mays no longer wears his uniform. Time marches on. Transition is inevitable. With each passing day, the game of our youth moves even further into history. But those vivid images that are so much a part of our life will always remain.
Game called. Across the field of play, the dusk has come, the hour is late. The fight is done, and lost or won. The player files out through the gate. The tumult dies. The cheer is hushed. The stands are bare. The park is still. But through the night, there shines the light of home beyond the silent hill.
Game called. Where in the golden light the bugle rolled the reveille. The shadows creep where night falls deep, and taps has called the end of play. The game is done, the score is in, the final cheer and jeer have passed. But in the night beyond the fight, the player finds his rest at last.
Game called upon the field of life. The darkness gathers far and wide. The dream is done, the score is spun. That stands forever in the guide. Nor victory, nor yet defeat is chalked against the player's name. But down the roll, the final scroll shows only how he played the game.
in association with Black Canyon Productions. This has been a presentation of HBO Sports, the network of champions.
Time is of the essence. The rhythms break, more varied and subtle than any kind of dance. Movement speeds up or lags. The ball goes out in sharp and angular drives or long, slow arcs. Comes in again, controlled and under aim. The players wheel or spurt, race, stoop, slide, halt, shift imperceptibly to new positions, watching the signs according to the batter, the score, the inning. Time is of the essence. Time is of the essence. The shadow moves from the plate to the box, from the box to second base, from second to the outfield, to the bleachers. Time is of the essence. The crowd and players are the same age always, but the man in the crowd is older every season. Come on, play ball.
For a large and varied group of Americans during the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, baseball was the national institution. It was a time when the game's presence was everywhere and meant everything. It permeated our soul and elevated our heart. From the Depression through the 1950s, baseball's popularity was far-reaching and undeniable, and its heroes were among the icons of our society. Writer Donald Honig.
You think of a young DiMaggio in the 30s, and if you're so inclined, you can think of him being part of what was almost a regal dynasty in this country with FDR in the White House and Joe Louis, heavyweight champion, and Ernest Hemingway shooting lions in Africa, and Joe DiMaggio in center field for the Yankees. This is one of the magical ingredients of baseball, that it's able, just by the mention of a team or a name, it's able to evoke an era. These memories just go up in your mind like a galaxy.
Often, baseball brings to life a specific era that is firmly rooted in the experience of youth. we think back to a time when life's natural progression takes hold, and we learn the game from our fathers or grandfathers and begin to embrace it and the dreams that go with it. Author Robert Creamer.
Kids played ball. Kids played ball from the time they were little, and they played all spring and summer and fall. It was the game. It was in my backyard, and my back stoop was sort of a cement stoop with an iron rail on it. And we used to go up and sit down there when it was too hot, and it felt like the dugout. And I always remember thinking that what I wanted to do more than anything else was to be a ball player so I could sit in the dugout in Yankee Stadium on a hot day. It must have seemed safe and fun. And the dugout symbolized it. The dugout was a place where you could be with your friends, the ball team. It just seemed like the most marvelous place in the world to be.
It's doubtful that anyone who fantasizes about the life of a major leaguer takes into account the road through the minor leagues. In the 30s, 40s, and 50s, that road was well traveled. There were hundreds of minor league teams and thousands of players hoping to get their chance. Donald Honig.
The Cardinal farm system consisted of, at its peak, of 50 teams, about 800 players. That's just the Cardinals. Every small town seemed to have an A&P and a Cardinal farm club in there. And this was just thrown out all over the country, in the most out-of-the-way backwater towns. And this is where they began and had to fight their way up.
In an era when the major leagues didn't exist west of St. Louis, one minor league was special. The Pacific Coast League had teams in cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco, and in many ways was a West Coast equivalent of the majors. Infielder Dario Lodigiani.
There was a lot of ball players in those days that were playing in the Coast League that could have still been playing in the major leagues. And there were some of the ball players that were playing in the Coast League were making anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 a year. So to play it up there in the big leagues and wondering, fighting every day whether you got a job or not, you come out here in the Coast League and you knew that you could play out here. And you felt a little more secure, and the pay was good.
Outfielder Gus Zernial.
In the Coast League, we had a lot of guys that made more money than guys in the big leagues. In fact, when I went to the big leagues the first time, they asked me to take a cut. Why should I go to the big leagues for $5,000 when I'm making $8,000 in the Coast League?
While the Coast League treated its players well, for most, the decision of whether or not to leave wasn't a difficult one to make. After all, it was still the minor leagues. Not that the minors weren't home to recognizable faces, like Chuck Connors in Montreal, or his Dodger farmhand teammate, Tommy Lasorda. But like most of their colleagues, they would have jumped at the chance to play in the major leagues. Outfielder Harry Walker.
Walker Cooper and I just finished our season in Columbus, and we drove all night to get there. Then we went to the ballpark the next morning, and I was excited to get out there to play. I can't remember too much except that I signed a contract for next year and didn't even know it, for a lot less money than we had agreed that I would do. It was really exciting to me. I mean, it was a tremendous thrill to play, and I didn't even think about what money was. I just thought I'm getting to play in the big league.
There were, of course, other prospective major leaguers who were more concerned about signing their contracts and didn't hesitate to confront their employers. Infielder Alex Grammas.
Dear Mr. Paul, I received your letter and contract which called for the same monthly salary of $700 per month and read with great interest all that you had to say regarding my 1953 salary. I want you to know that I'm very grateful for the chance to make the Cincinnati team. It's something that all ball players set as their goal, and in this respect, I'm no exception. I want to play big league ball. I have no intention of knocking around in the minors until I'm too old to make a start in some other field. Mr. Paul, on the other hand, I do feel that I'm entitled to a little more consideration concerning my monthly salary. I can truthfully say that I'm in no way trying to be bullheaded or belligerent. It's definitely not one of my traits. It's just that I honestly feel that I had a year that deserves more. Mr. Paul, I'm willing to meet you halfway and settle for $850. I'm enclosing my unsigned contract and hoping that my new proposal will meet with your approval.
Even though Gabe Paul eventually gave Grammis his $850 a month, it was still clear for most he couldn't put a price on the player's love for the game. Catcher, Joe Garagiola.
When they gave me my own uniform, I mean, this may sound sacrilegious, but I'm sure it must be like when the Pope gives the vestments to make somebody a real cardinal. And it was just like it should have been a ceremony. It should not have been a clubhouse guy just handing me the uniform. It should have said, here it is, your hometown team. You are a Cardinal.
Still, at a time when most players were forced to accept management's take-it-or-leave-it attitude, life in the majors was not for the faint of heart. Pitcher, Eldon Auker.
When I went up with the Tigers, he said, you're going to be a starting pitcher. And he said, I want to tell you my philosophy. He said, when I pay a pitcher to start a ball game, I expect him to pitch the entire ball game. He said, I can't afford to pay one guy to start the game and one guy or two guys to finish the game. He said, I expect you to pitch the entire ball game. I don't care whether it's 9 innings or 10 innings or 12 innings. He said, that's your problem, and you get yourself in shape for that. Now, if you can't go it, well, he said, I'll get somebody that can. It was that simple.
Hall of Famer, Enos Slaughter.
I came in from right field one night, and the third base dugout was a long ways back, and I walked. And he says, kid, if you're tired, I'll get you some help. And from 1936 through 1961, I hit the top step running going to the outfield, and I hit the top step running coming in. And I continued that the rest of my career.
Whether it came from management or teammates, intimidation was something that a rookie had to overcome if he wanted to remain in the major leagues. New York Yankee, Tommy Henrich.
There is a doubt in your mind whether you're really sound enough to be in the big leagues. You got a decent reputation, but you're always wondering, is some guy going to beat me out? At least I felt that way. But you do reach a point after a while, you say, I don't care who they got. They ain't going to take my job. I'm here. I'm not only here, I belong here.
Who says romance is gray with age, that men no longer battle odds, when two raw kids from brush and sage still face the lightning of the gods? Can life be stupid, drab, or slow, with dizzy Dean and schoolboy roll?
During the Great Depression, businesses closed with regularity, but not baseball. In fact, in those dreary days, the fans who came out to the game found that there was nothing depressing at all about spending time at the ballpark. Pitcher, Mel Harder.
In 1929, they had the stock market crash, and then along about 1933, the banks closed, and we were in bad shape then. And we knew what we had to do. We had to scrape and save, and the $375 I made here in Cleveland in 1928 carried me right through pretty good. But I had a lot of friends from Omaha that was on a WPA for months, where I think that their salary was about $1.25 a day, just pushing a rake or shovel on boulevards and everything. Some of the clubs noticed the lack in attendance, but they decided to go ahead and play baseball because it helped the fans and the people to take their minds off of their problems.
In the late 20s and early 30s, if fans couldn't get to the stadium to see the games, then the players took the game to the fans. Even Babe Ruth joined the era of barnstorming. In the late 20s, Ruth and his Yankee teammate Lou Gehrig spent part of the off-season traveling around the country with two teams that competed against each other. Of course, Ruth and Gehrig weren't the only ones out on the road. Many players barnstormed during the Depression, and although it made for a tough life, those were tough times, and it was still a good way to make a little extra money. Hall of Famer Charlie Gehringer.
We had some good teams that went through Canada and went to the coast and went to all parts of the country that didn't have baseball. Usually it was hometown setups, and I don't think we ever lost a ball game. We just, the fans enjoyed seeing us, and of course to see their own players try to compete. We did pretty well picking up a few bucks, made probably more in a month there than we did in the last month of the season. Yeah, could buy 2 suits.
Several times during the 30s, some of baseball's best-known players barnstormed in Japan. But it was a lesser-known catcher named Moe Berg who made the most out of his trips. Berg traveled to Japan twice, first in 1932 to teach the game, the second time in 1934, from which Berg, under the cover of baseball, learned enough about Tokyo as a spy to aid the Allied cause in World War II. Charlie Gehringer.
He had a camera with him all the while, and he was taking shots here and there, and most of them off the field, so to speak, not concerning baseball. So I had a feeling that he was trying to hunt something up, running that camera almost constantly somewhere. And the people later, of course, when the war came on, said, well, this guy was picking our pockets over in Japan.
Far off, I hear the rolling, roaring cheers. They come to me from many yesterdays, from record deeds that cross the fading years and light the landscape with their brilliant plays. The long line forms through life's remembered years. The flaming heart, cold brain, and firm command of nerve and sinew blotting out all fears. The will to win, beyond the final stand. These are the factors in each hour of need that mark the pathway of the winning breed.
Who's gonna win the pennant this year? That's what they all wanna know. Which is the team that'll take the flag? Which is the team they won't stop? I'm a baseball fan, a red-hot fan. It's a subject I never can drop. Who's gonna win the pennant this year? Who's gonna come out on top?
Do you think that the Giants or Cubs will come through? And what do you figure the Dodgers will do? They tell me the Cardinals look pretty hot.
They tell me the Yankees may take it this fall.
They all look good and I can't make my mind up.
So once again I repeat, oh, who's gonna win the pennant this year? That's what they all wanna know. Which is the team that'll take the flag? Which is the team they won't stop? I'm a baseball fan, a red-hot fan.
In an era in which there were just 16 teams in the major leagues, the question of who would win the pennant should have provided a variety of answers. In truth, however, season after season, only a few teams in both leagues were consistently successful. The top of the standings were nearly always the private domain of baseball's privileged few. Robert Creamer.
teams like the Yankees were there year after year, and there was a sense of continuity, a sense of permanence, a sense of almost of security. If you were a Yankee fan, you felt very secure. Your team was going to win all the time. And I suppose it's that way in other places. In St. Louis, people rooting for the Cardinals had that feeling year after year they were going to have somebody to root for. You had a lousy job, and your wife was cranky, and the kids were no good, but you rooted for the Cardinals, and they won. And it gave you a little sense of being important, holding on.
In the 1950s, Casey Stengel's New York Yankees held on to more pennants than any other team, continuing a championship march that methodically began in the mid-30s under manager Joe McCarthy. Eldon Auker.
McCarthy, New York Yankees, he wouldn't allow a player on his team to smoke a pipe because his philosophy was that a pipe smoker was complacent. He said, I don't want any complacent ball players on there. And he didn't have it either.
Author Ralph Schoenstein.
They used to say to Joe McCarthy, he says, you know, Joe, you're a wonderful manager. He says, I'm sure a genius. He says, every day I write down Henrik, Keller, DiMaggio, Ralph, Dickey, and you should see what happens. For 10 years, those same 8 guys played every game. They played. They never missed games.
Gus Zernial.
They went out to beat you, and they would tell you they were going to beat you, and they played to beat you. It didn't make any difference if they were 20 games in front or they had you beat by 9-0. They still tried to kick your brains out, and they pretty much did so.
In a 29-year span from 1936 to 1964, the Yankees won 22 American League titles and 16 World Championships. They were, without a doubt, the most successful and recognizable team in all of sport. Their fame carried throughout the world, even to Japan, where the Yankees were welcomed as heroes on a postseason trip in the mid-50s. It was a privilege to wear a Yankee uniform, and unheard of to willingly give it up. In 1946, Joe DiMaggio once playfully wore the colors of the Red Sox. But once a player put on the pinstripes, no other uniform could possibly fit as well. Tommy Henrik.
The Browns better never make a trade for me to come here for somebody. And he says, why? I says, because I ain't showing up in this ballpark.
That subject I never can drop. Who's gonna win the pennant this year? Who's gonna come out on top?
If the Giants win but 2 of 4, and the Dodgers 6 of 10, the Phillies, as in days of yore, will finish last again.
During the 30s, 40s, and 50s, baseball had a clearly defined class structure, a classic struggle between the haves and the have-nots. For teams like the Philadelphia A's and Philadelphia Phillies, life near the cellar was an annual occurrence, each season a humbling cycle of resignation and defeat. Donald Honig.
Those teams were doomed. The Phillies were in the second division, I think something like 30 out of 32 years, something like that. The Boston Braves weren't much better. And the St. Louis Browns, one year, their season's attendance was about, I think, 86,000 for the season. So how could those teams ever hope to achieve any success? They were just cemented at the bottom.
At the heart of the problem was money. Without it, you couldn't afford quality players. And without quality players, you couldn't win. Such was the case with the poorer clubs, like the Boston Braves. And certainly baseball's most noted failures, the St. Louis Browns. Harry Walker.
The only way they operated was sell ball players. And the Browns, that's why the Browns never really got off the ground, because every year they'd be in debt for their rooms and their transportation. And the Yankees, was somebody that had pretty good money, would say, look, we'd like to have your third baseman. Well, I said, well, he's our best player. Well, I know that, but that's why we want him. And they'd finally beat him down and say, you owe $200,000. You can't start the season unless you pay these debts because nobody's going to let you have room for transportation. So they'd have to sell a ball player for a couple of $100,000, a little better, and get 2 ball players that sit on the bench with the Yankees but never did play with them either.
Infielder Johnny Berardino.
When you get down to the end of the season on a losing ball club, you can't wait for the season to be over. You know, the Yankees were customarily, they sent a little bonus money to the fellas that were in the service, who had to leave the team going to the service. And I remember the St. Louis Browns sent me a deck of playing cards with their logo on it. And I got to tell you, I was so infuriated, I took that deck of cards and I flipped them all over the Hawaiian Islands.
Not that it was any better playing for Connie Mack's Philadelphia A's. Dario Lodigiani.
Well, the A's, you just went out there and hope you survived. I mean, that's the way it was. You know, you had a second division ball club, and you didn't have the kind of club that was going to, say, beat the Yankees or beat the Red Sox of Detroit or anything like that. Although we weren't a winning ball club, I enjoyed playing there. It was a lot of fun playing against all those top clubs. But as far as thinking that we were going to win a pennant, if we won 3 or 4 games in a row, that was a tremendous streak.
Even the advertisements around the stadium told the story of the haves and the have-nots. Joe Garagiola.
I love signs on the wall. Of course, in St. Louis, they had a star of the game. They might as well have just imprinted Musial there and left it there because he did it most of all. But the Lifebuoy sign, that brings back memories of the Philadelphia part. They had the Lifebuoy sign up there and said the Phillies use Lifebuoy, and somebody had written in their graffiti style, and they still stink.
For the Senators or Browns or Phillies or A's, it was always wait till next year. Not that the next year would ever be any different, but hope springs eternal in each baseball fan. Poet Donald Hall.
We play this every day. And toward the end of August, you know, you're 12 games behind or you're 20 games behind in the loss column. What can you do? You go out to the park and watch the game. There aren't so many people there. You just watch the game going on and you wait till next year. Hope comes along. You read about some kids out of high school playing in single A, some double-A players who might come up to triple-A, and you think, well, maybe we'll put it together next year. This seems to be the sport for defeat, but defeat with hope. We accept defeat and rush hope in.
Sometimes I feel like I will never stop. Just go on forever. Till one fine morning, I'm going to reach up and grab me a handful of stars, swing out my long, lean leg, and whip 3 hot strikes burning down the heavens, and look over at God and say, how about that?
Baseball is a game for dreamers. Its ebbs and flows conducive to using your imagination. Donald Hall.
There are wonderful pauses in the game of baseball. I love the moment just before the pitch when the batter is all attent and coiled and no longer wagging his bat, and the pitcher is leaning forward just before he rocks back. You get that again and again, and you don't breathe at that moment. Everything is halted. And then, God knows, for the most part, hundreds of times in a game, virtually nothing happens. The batter looks on, it's a strike or it's a ball, we go back and wind up again. We wind up this toy, and then it is set to spring, and then it springs, and goodness knows. People are running on the base paths, everything, all hell is breaking loose. And just for a minute, less than a minute, just a few seconds, and then we come back to pause again. It's a magic and mystical moment.
In the time before television, a fan who hadn't listened to the game on the radio would get the first recap of those magical and mystical moments with the arrival of the daily newspaper. There, baseball was well chronicled and eloquently described by some of the most gifted writers in the business. Ralph Schoenstein,
Red Smith, and Bill Hines, and Jimmy Cannon, and Bill Coram, and Frank Graham. These people had their own voices. You grabbed the paper. And of course, the box scores were the wonderful things. And a box score was like a holy relic. And you would pore over them. And you'd see the players of the long names who had the, apostrophe Cuccinello, C, apostrophe H, apostrophe L, which was wonderful. We had kids who had scrapbooks of box scores. They'd paste them all in.
Donald Hall.
People would, of course, learn how to tip their cap in particular ways or swing the bats in particular ways because they'd heard them described, first in newspapers, later in the radio. And my grandfather in New Hampshire, he followed the game in the newspapers. So he would think of Ted Williams. He thought of Ted Williams for 25 years without ever seeing him.
There were times, however, when those newspaper descriptions were embellished or exaggerated, sprung by a writer on an often gullible public thirsting for information. Playwright Stephen Longstreet.
They were great storytellers. They were very picturesque. But you'd hear wonderful stories about this kid, barefooted kid who came out of the Azores and invented this ball because he used to knock crows out of the trees to keep them from eating the corn, and he developed this great arm. And none of this was true, but these were wonderful stories.
While it was true that aside from game summaries, most newspapermen used their imagination freely, circumstances also dictated that they use their discretion. Writer Haywood Hale Broun.
There were 9 newspapers in New York when I became a baseball writer. And we traveled as a group. And there is no doubt we were the house writers. Then if there were scandals, we did not write them because it would not be fair to our boys. It was all very cozy. And the players were not distanced from us by the hugeness of their salaries. It was much more intimate, the relationship between player and writer when I began, but there was still the basic gulf in that they did it and we didn't.
The players played it, the writers wrote about it, and the photographers shot pictures, like these of the 1934 World Series, so the next morning in the paper, the fans could see it. In the days before the telephoto lens, photographers stood on the field, both before and during the game, to get the best pictures possible. Dario Lodigiani.
Oh, yes, lots of photographers. God almighty, yes. I remember when they had those great big box cameras when you wound them up, and when they snapped them, they sounded like a bomb went off. Sure, they were all over the place.
Then, of course, there was radio.
This is Byram Saab at the microphone, and together with Mel Allen, we're ready to send your way all of the action of the second game of the World Series. Here in Chicago.
Your neighborhood Texaco service station welcomes you to another baseball broadcast brought to you direct from Comiskey Park by permission of the Chicago White Sox and the Boston Red Sox to stimulate interest in our national game and in your local team. And now out to Comiskey Park and Hal Taunton, who is going to give us some inside information on today's game.
Hello again, everybody. This is Harry Cowley, greeting you for your radio host, the Gillette Safety Razor Company, bringing you this great all-star baseball game.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and hello, baseball fans everywhere. This is Jimmy Dudley at the Polo Grounds in New York, greeting you for the
Joe Garagiola.
The broadcasters became bigger than some of the players, most of the players. I mean, you go to Cincinnati, and pretty soon they'll tell you about Wade Hoyt and rain delays, and great stories he would tell.
Hello, baseball fans. This is Wade indeed, today's game is to be played right here at Causley Field, which has been the home of the Cincinnati Reds for as long as the oldest citizen I remember.
France Locke's in St. Louis, I can remember him talking about the bulging biceps of Ducky Medwick. I couldn't wait to see Medwick. Kurt Gowdy in Boston.
There's a long poke in the deep right center field, way back, way back. Pearsall leaping up, and he wraps him with a home run.
In every city, the voices of the game were prominent.
They'll be roaring on every pitch today.
A great throng of enthusiastic St. Louis fans was turned out for the second game of the 1944 World Series.
A colorful picture is transpiring right in front of us. The American Legion band of the
city has been eating, sleeping, and talking World Series for weeks, and has packed every available
The municipality of St. Louis on the banks of the mighty Mississippi is indeed the baseball capital of the world for 1944.
Every day they were coming into your house, and even though you never met them personally, they were your friends.
Good afternoon, baseball fans. This is Mel Allen. The final game of the 1952 World Series.
Radio was especially important at World Series time.
This is Red Bob at Yankee Stadium in New York as the Brooklyn Dodgers and New York Yankees get set.
The games were always played during the day, and people followed the series by listening at work or at school. Actor Billy Crystal.
I remember Mr. McAllis, history teacher. Excuse me, Mr. McAllis, I have a terrible upset stomach. Can I go to the bathroom? First one, it worked. 5 minutes later, Mr. McAllis, I'm not feeling, can I? Go ahead. This went on for 3 times. It started to go out the 4th time. Mr. McAllis said, Mr. Crystal, at least when you come back, would you give us all the score? Okay.
This is the first game of the 1938 World Series. Every seat for the 2 days here in Chicago has been sold out. And Wrigley Field seats 43,660. So there are that many here today.
Haywood Hale Broom.
The World Series and the Kentucky Derby were the 2 things that happened at just the right time. The first big race, which meant the spring, and the 7 games, which meant the autumn. And these were in tune with the rhythm of the people and their games. Yes, I think the whole country kind of stopped and paid attention to the series.
Especially the players, who embraced the chance to perform on center stage.
I have a rendezvous this fall on some World Series battleground where I will gladly take the mound to pitch my team to victory. I have a rendezvous this fall, and that is where I long to be. God knows that nervousness will creep into my heart, but I have a rendezvous this fall to capture baseball's grandest prize and start to take my rightful place as one of baseball's honored few. And I'll not fail that rendezvous.
In the country of baseball, men rise to glory in their 20s and their early 30s, a garland briefer than a girl's, or at least briefer than a young woman's, and then the long meadow slopes downward. In the country of baseball, time is the air we breathe, and the wind swirls us backward and forward until we seem so reckoned in time and seasons that all time and all seasons become the same. Citizens of the country of baseball retire, yet they never retire. They live in continual twilight, paler and fainter than the noon of games.
I met a lad, handsome and witty, who whispered to me, "You are so pretty." Soon he and I were cabareting. We had a good time, goes without saying. I tried to get him in my sweet embrace. All he had on his mind was the pen and trace. And though I saw him practically every night, we never went to movies or saw a fight. We just saw baseball, baseball, DiMaggio and baseball, baseball, Chicago Cubs, baseball, baseball, DeRocher and baseball, baseball.
At a time when a baseball player's wage wasn't much more than the average American's, ceremonies like this one honoring Cardinal pitcher Lon Warneke were understandably low-key. In fact, after a 10-year career, to most major leaguers, a shotgun and a couple of hunting dogs was a fine reward. Haywood hailed Brune.
Most of them were farmers, and what most of them hoped to get out of baseball was in the 6 or 7 years of an average career to save enough money to buy 40 more acres or replace 2 mules with a tractor. Or if you came from a town, to buy a hardware store. Baseball players are very strong for buying hardware stores because the stock wasn't perishable. Oranges rot, nails don't.
In the years after the Depression, major leaguers, like most citizens, put in an honest day's work. Writer Robert Creamer.
Just look at those faces. In every face, I don't think there was an ounce of fat in any of those faces. They were all lean and hard. They were guys who had scrambled all their lives. You could just tell that. You didn't really know major league players, but they seemed approachable. They seemed more real.
If ball players seemed more approachable in the 40s and 50s, it was precisely because money hadn't yet distanced them from the common man. In fact, theirs was a lifestyle that most people could relate to. Joe Garagiola.
We worked in the wintertime, like everybody else did. It was not unusual, when you travel especially, to ride to the Polo Grounds in the subway. Take the subway to Brooklyn. So if a fan left the ballpark, he'd sit there and he'd talk to you, and he'd say, how's it the game today? Why did you swing? Why didn't you take a third strike? That kind of thing. And pretty soon, you struck up a friendship, and we were working stiffs who happened to be Major League Baseball players.
Nowhere was the spirit of kinship between player and fan more evident than it was in Brooklyn, a community that adored its Dodgers. Broadcaster Red Barber.
Brooklyn had been looked down on, especially by Manhattan, with the tall buildings, with Broadway, and Brooklyn was called the bedroom of New York. The one thing that Brooklyn had, which they could strike back at Manhattan, was the ball club, the Brooklyn Dodgers.
In Brooklyn, the passion to root for the Dodgers seemed to have been acquired at birth, an unbroken chain handed down from generation to generation. Stephen Longstreet.
It was a crusade. It was a fetish. It was paranoia. Them bums. Ebbets Field. It was like a religion, that's what it was. It wasn't a sport, it was a religion.
Ebbets Field had the famous heckler Hilda Chester and an off-key band known as the Symphony. Before every home game, Happy Felton's Knot Hole Gang played on television, all of which contributed to the legendary infatuation that Brooklyn had with its team. Donald Honig.
The Dodgers bespoke Brooklyn around the world, because if you remember all those old World War II movies, there was always somebody in there. Somebody in the platoon was from Brooklyn, and he would be worrying about the Dodgers. The team was a very important part of the community, and their neighbors, who they would see in the supermarket and in the playground playing with their children, but were Brooklyn Dodgers. They lived in the neighborhood.
Pitcher Carl Erskine.
The Brooklyn team to the Brooklyn fan was family. Abe Meyerson, who owned a little deli, and Abe had a bunch of kids. I know he wasn't wealthy by any means, probably starving. But every time I'd pitch, Abe Meyerson would be at my door. He'd bring me 2 big grocery bags full of deli groceries. And he'd say, "Here, Cry, I can't take that, Abe. Why would you give me that? Oh, you guys shouldn't pay rent. You shouldn't have to pay anything to be in Brooklyn."
In the late 40s, the Dodgers were not only one of baseball's most beloved teams, they were rapidly becoming one of the best. And part of the reason was the arrival of Jackie Robinson in 1947. Red Barber.
The Brooklyn fan is eternally hopeful. He wants this ball player to do well so the Dodgers can do well. And if Robinson could do well, that was just fine. And once Robinson demonstrated his ability, once he started dancing down off first base, and my goodness, Ebbets Field went wild, and every eye was on him. The players accepted Robinson grudgingly. But as he demonstrated his ability on the playing field, they suddenly realized he might lead them to a pennant.
While the Dodgers continued their progressive ways by adding players like Roy Campanella and Don Newcombe, Brooklyn's Boys of Summer found themselves in 6 World Series during Jackie's 11 years. Each time the Dodgers faced the Yankees, and in the process created one of baseball's most treasured rivalries. 2 teams joined forever in their excellence.
The two together make me think of October, of shortstops dueling in Ebbets Field in the late afternoon shadows of Yankee Stadium, while we argued who was better, Rizzuto or Reese. Like choosing between 2 words with almost the same meaning. Astounding or amazing, incandescent or luminous, Rizzuto or Reese.
Unfortunately for the Dodgers and their fans, the rivalry proved to be one-sided. Brooklyn lost to the Yankees in 1947, 49, 52, and again in 1953. The team finally came away triumphant in 1955, winning an epic 7-game series. But just 3 years later, the Dodgers were gone. Sadly, they had been taken away from the borough that loved them.
Don't tear the treasured ballpark down. Long has it brought me joy, as many a Brooklyn player has that I've watched as a boy. Above it rings Red Barber's voice, amidst the crowd's deep roar, the summer sounds that would be heard by Brooklyn fans no more. Oh, let the mighty field stand as tribute to her past. The loyalty of all her fans can never be surpassed. Forget the California gold, let loyalty prevail. For loyalty of Brooklyn fans can never be for sale.
But yesterday, I watched them start. Young wonders all in serried row. By now, I've seen them all depart. The years flow faster than we know. Today, fresh from the corner lot, we praise some youngster on the team. Tomorrow's page will know him not. The years flow faster than we dream.
Every city had its baseball heroes. In New York, if you chose to be a Yankee fan during the 1950s, your hero was Mickey Mantle. Billy Crystal.
I felt that when I went to a game in Yankee Stadium, that Mickey Mantle knew that I was in the ballpark. I strongly felt that he was saying to himself, I better have a good day today. Bill's here. Damn, I don't feel good either. I gotta get a hit or steal a base or throw somebody out. He paid us $350. Mickey Mantle was everybody's hero. He was who you wanted to be. I mean, I walk like him, I talk like him. I did my bar mitzvah with a drawl, you know. He was a stunning athlete to watch.
So too were many other stunning athletes. who, through the years, were heroes around the country as well. Donald Honig.
Now, baseball has its own private universe, with its own deities, its own Lucifers, its own fallen angels. Babe Ruth, of course, is the deity.
Haywood Hale Broun.
When Miller Huggins was managing the Yankees, Miller got sore because Babe was not showing up for batting practice. And he said to the then traveling secretary, Mark Roth, if that big bum doesn't show up for batting practice, I'm really going to tear him apart. Well, 5 minutes before game time, he came in shedding camel's hair, throwing his cap, his coat. Went out and hit a home run, 2 doubles and a single or something. And Roth, who was something of a troublemaker, said after the game, hey, Miller, you're going to say something to Babe about not making batting practice? Go on. Miller said, yes, I was. Hey, Babe. Yes. Hi, Babe. He was the hero in excelsis. I mean, he was in his appetites overpowering, in his play overpowering, in his joy in life overpowering.
A writer once said that to capture Ruth with cold statistics would be like trying to keep up with him on a night out. His unparalleled ability and unmatched personality on and off the field made him a tremendous attraction everywhere he went. New York Yankee, Frank Crosetti.
Every time I go to the bat, I try to hit a home run because I know the people come out to see me hit a home run, which they did. They did. And when he'd strike out, and I mean he struck out, he really will. Well, and they would even get a charge when he struck out. They would even, they would yell even on that. I think there's only one number that should ever be retired from the Little League clear on up to the Major Leagues, and that's Babe's number 3. I think that the game owes that to the Babe.
3 years after Ruth retired, he became a first base coach for the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1938, more for his value as a public attraction than a baseball man. Nearly a decade later, he was stricken with throat cancer. Haywood Hale Broun.
He shrank away and was a shadow, but in Greek myths, heroes always die in battle, which is as perhaps it should be. They have died in the fullness of their strength. They have never shrunken. They have never grown old. The old athlete is almost always an object of pity. Brief is the season of man's delight, but at that moment, just as Gehrig said, this is the happiest day of my life when he was dying, what is now coursing through you is not the thin blood of the last days of your life, but the flood of memories of the things you did when you were there.
Babe Ruth made his last appearance in a Yankee uniform in June of 1948, moving tribute to a man and an era now long gone.
The only real game, I think, in the world, baseball.
There's been so many lovely things said about me, and I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to thank everybody. Thank you.
Broadcaster Mel Allen.
2 months later, Babe passed away. The people were lined up all around Yankee Stadium, many with babies in their arms, waiting to pass by and pay their last respects to Babe Ruth. I went over to one gentleman and I said, "You'll forgive me, sir, but I said, why would you bring your baby with you?" He said, "Well, when he grows up, I can tell him that he saw the greatest baseball player of all time."
Game called. Across the field of play, the dusk has come, the hour is late. The fight is done, and lost or won, the player files out through the gate. The tumult dies, the cheer is hushed, the stands are bare, the park is still. But through the night there shines the light of home beyond the silent hill.
Game called, where in the golden light the bugle rolled the reveille. The shadows creep where night falls deep, and taps has called the end of play. The game is done, the score is in. The final cheer and jeer have passed, but in the night beyond the fight, the player finds his rest at last.
Game called. Upon the field of life, the darkness gathers far and wide. The dream is done, the score is spun, that stands forever in the guide. Nor victory, nor yet defeat, is chalked against the player's name. But down the roll, the final scroll shows only how he played the game.
In association with Black Canyon Productions, this has been a presentation of HBO Sports, the network of champions.
Good to see you again. You're right. I don't come by near enough. We are old friends. Have played together since my hair blonded in summer. Before I shaved. When I was a stick boy. You never change. Well, your makeup is different. Shinier, neon. But your voice sounds just the same. I've missed you. Have you missed me?
Baseball's emotional hold on America was as strong as ever at the beginning of the 1960s. Fresh off a decade filled with unlimited optimism and growth, the game, like America, eased into the new decade blissfully unaware of the changing times ahead. But those times were coming. By decade's end, there would be a seismic shift in baseball, both on and off the field. Dramatic changes that would take the game in new and sometimes conflicting directions. It was in sharp contrast to the early 60s, when baseball was still a familiar game. A game with a nice, comfortable rhythm, played mostly in sunlight, in quaint traditional stadiums, in front of fans that had followed the same teams and stars for generations. The game of our collective youth.
It was a 2-hour drive from my house to the Bronx. As we came in over the Major Deegan, there it was.
Actor Billy Crystal.
And you walked in and you heard that sound, the crowd buzzing. There's a smell of those hot dogs and mustard and beer that gets in the cement and just stays in those tunnels. And then you walked out and there was that field. It was beyond belief how big Yankee Stadium originally was. 461 to dead center with those monuments. And I always used to think that Babe Ruth was actually buried in center field like most of us. When Mantle came up to the plate, it sounded like the ocean at night. There's no other sound but the waves hitting the shore, and it was loud, and it was an excitement like something really great could happen at any moment. And Mickey hit it. I'll never forget the sound of it. And I remember my father saying, "Oh my God, it's going out." And it just kept going up, 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 up. And the ground shook. It was unbelievable. There was a stun in the crowd that you couldn't believe. There was a buzz for 3 innings, people talking about it.
Broadcaster Bob Costas.
If Central Casting was to send in a baseball hero, they couldn't find anybody better than Mickey Mantle. A big, blonde, strapping kid out of Oklahoma. Gets off the plane in New York carrying a $7 cardboard suitcase. The hayseed who you could almost see cranking his neck up to assess the skyscrapers. It's a perfect story.
In the early 1960s, Mickey Mantle was our country's symbolic son, our star of stars, the physical and spiritual center of the most successful team in America's most popular sport, the New York Yankees, winners of 5 straight American League championships from 1960 to 1964. Writer Leonard Coppett.
The Yankees of the early 60s were distinctly stronger than the Yankees of the 50s. The Yankees still had their accumulated stars still at a playable age, and the products of what had been the best farm system for about 20 years.
In 1961, Mantle and his teammate Roger Maris set off in tandem after Babe Ruth's home run record. Maris broke it, adding to the legend of a team others saw as awash in arrogance and loaded with muscle. Boston Red Sox pitcher Bill Monbouquet.
When I pitched against the Yankees at Fenway especially, I used to just watch batting practice.
Here comes Richardson. He hits line drives all over the plate. And then Tony Kubek hits the ball the other way. And then the bombers were coming.
Oh, my God. couldn't believe you could hit balls that far, and it was easy. I'd watch Al Forrester, groundskeeper, go up the ladder on the wall with 4 or 5 buckets and come down with all of them full. Now, you knew how many balls that were in there, probably 150 balls. And when we finished batting practice, we only had 1 bucket. 9 balls in there. I'm trying to think about, how am I going to pitch to these guys? Next thing you know, Scarron's taking some ground balls. He said, "You going to hang me any curve balls today?" or something, you know.
For decades, the Yankees had been the model of consistency, methodically winning pennant after pennant. And the first few years of the 60s looked just like the preceding decades. With one exception. In previous generations, the Yanks reveled in their corporate image, always insisting that new teammates follow a strict and professional code. Now, with rebellious players like Joe Pepitone, that was changing.
I was the first one to bring a hairdryer into the clubhouse. They never heard of that. They thought I was something strange about me, you know? And they said, "What is it with this guy?" I called the telephone company up to come and put a phone in my locker. Thinking, what the hell's going on now, you know? Pepitone ordered the phone. Hey, the guy's ready to attach it to the thing, and Powell came out, grabbed this guy, threw him out of the clubhouse. Oh, he was really pissed. I said, "I'll pay for it." He said, "No, you ain't having no phone. Are you crazy?"
Pitcher Jim Bouton.
Whitey and Mickey told Joe Pepitone and Phil Linz that they were inviting them out to dinner. And Pepitone and Linz couldn't believe they're going to be going out with the big guys, Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford. So here's the address. It's the Flame Restaurant. When you get to the Flame, make sure you ask for Mickey's table. It's in the back. It's way, way out of town. It's in this bombed-out section of dilapidated buildings, boarded-up windows, and sure enough, there's this doorway with the glass broken and a sign hanging halfway down. It says The Flame.
In the 40s and 50s, we were taught to catch the ball with 2 hands, and we did. To keep our eye on the ball, and we did. To run everything out, and we did. To touch all the bases, and we did. And then came the 60s.
In 1958, the Dodgers and Giants reacted to the post-war population explosion and moved west. 3 years later, in 1961, the Los Angeles Angels joined them in California, as baseball expanded for the first time, adding 2 new teams to the American League. In 1962, the National League grew by 2 teams, making a return to New York after a 4-year absence. While aging hometown stars like Duke Snider brought back memories of the glorious 50s, Casey Stengel's Mets turned out to be a failure on the field, losing a major league record 120 games. Although more jobs were available, baseball's expansion did little financially for the players. They remained at the mercy of the team's thrifty owners, who were reluctant to share the wealth. Pitcher Jim Bouton.
My first contract with the Yankees was actually signed 5 minutes before opening day. Dan Topping Jr. comes over to me in the clubhouse. He says, "Get over here, kid." And he throws this piece of paper down on the table. He says, "Don't bother reading it. It's the same one everybody else signs. Just sign it and let's go." Couldn't have an agent, although I don't know why an agent would want 10% of $7,000. You couldn't even have your father there.
Los Angeles Dodger Maury Wills.
Here I am, just gung-ho, somewhat dumb baseball player. And he said, "What do you want?" I said, "What's your offering?" Now, I stole 104 bases, changed the game. I came out of that office in 15, 20 minutes, sweating, happy I was still on the team.
Hall of Famer Frank Robinson.
When I had my most valuable player year in 1961, we'll give you what you made last year. I hit 290 and drove in over 100 runs one year, and they wanted to cut me. I deserve a raise. This is what he means. He said, well, I drove in 100 runs. I hit this, I hit that. He said, yeah, but you left 719 runners on base.
Pitcher Jim Cott.
They didn't like single players. They tried to influence you into getting married, raising a family, settling down. Then they knew you had obligations, and they really had you over a barrel.
Ray Boone, when I first joined the ball club, he said, Al, he says, if you can leave this game by owning your own home, you've had a good career.
Hall of Famer Al Kaline.
What little bit of money I made, I want to be able to keep and not spend it over the winter months because I had 2 little boys and I wanted to think down the road that, I want them to go to college. We started saving money and getting a job. I got a job every year. I played baseball. I played 21 and a half years.
Pitcher Dick Raditz.
My first year, I played for $7,500. I hauled furniture and taught school in the off-season, made $11,000. I was a teamster for 20 years and paid my dues religiously.
Until 1967, the minimum salary in the major leagues never rose higher than $6,000. Contracts were also very restrictive. Players were held captive by the organization that signed them, unable to move freely from team to team. Ironically, as writer Gordon Edis remembers, what was bad for players was good for fans.
When the Reggie Smiths and the Mike Andrews and the Mike Ryans and the Russ Gibsons came up to the Red Sox, you knew, or you sensed anyway, that they would be there for a while, so you weren't afraid to give them your heart. You weren't afraid to give Jim Lomborg your heart and Rico Petrocelli.
Al Kaline.
That's one of the great things that we had in Detroit throughout the 60s. We had the same players for a long time. They came through the minor leagues together. They graduated up to the big leagues, and we played for a long period of time, 6, 7, 8 years. Fathers could take their kids to the ballpark. They really connected with the players more so. The fans knew who they were going to have on the field from year to year.
Writer Tom Boswell.
As you cast your mind back, you're amazed at how vivid the teams are from that period and how many good players they had. Even the worst teams in the league had a core of exciting players. I mean, the Cubs in '63 have a lineup that's a famous lineup. I mean, look at that. Ernie Banks, Hall of Fame. Billy Williams, Hall of Fame. Ron Santo, borderline Hall of Fame. You tended to know them more intensely.
Bob Costas.
Because guys stayed with the same teams, you identified them with those teams and with their uniforms. And it's strange because relatively few games were on television, so you couldn't say that we actually saw more baseball in the 60s. But maybe what we saw made a deeper impression. So in a sense, you were more distant from those teams. But there were a manageable number of teams, and the best players tended to stay in one place. So you became familiar with the rosters of teams, and if someone said the Pirates, you immediately conjured up a notion of Roberto Clemente and Bill Mazeroski. If somebody said Crosley Field, well, you knew that there was an incline out there in center field and a laundry out behind the fence in left, and that their lineup included Veda Pinson, Frank Robinson, and later Pete Rose. There was a mental picture that immediately jumped to mind, and the core of those teams was constant.
Filmmaker John Sayles.
If you think of it in dramatic terms, the teams were more like long-running series. They were more like Hill Street Blues or Cheers. You could turn the dial on this channel on this night, and you knew who was going to be there. And in that way had ongoing character.
All of us from that generation retain a vivid image of guys' numbers. Only one person could be 24. That was Willie Mays. And only Al Kaline could be number 6. And only Carl Yastrzemski was number 8 if it was a Boston Red Sox uniform. or Frank Robinson, number 20. Only Mickey Mantle could be number 7. Only Roberto Clemente could be number 21. There were a couple of 44s that stood out, no doubt about that. Willie McCovey, Henry Aaron. But they were unmistakable in their own way. Juan Marichal, number 27, with his leg kicking to the sky. Bob Gibson, glaring in, fearsome on the mound, number 45. The game meant so much to us that they made an indelible impression.
He is throwing hard again, clipping corners, shaving letters, dusting off the heavy stick crowding clean up, clean down to his smelly socks. And when that right spike hits the ground, he's had his look already and gets hollow in the belly. In his meanest daydream, he lets fly a sweet stream of spit. His catcher pops his mitt and calls him baby.
You had individual games that managed to rivet the country on Saturday afternoon.
Tom Boswell.
You could see everybody on the game of the week. And I still remember in the summers being a camp counselor. Marichal against Koufax. Camp stopped. We're not having free swim now. They can drown. I'm not being a lifeguard from 2 to 4 on Saturday afternoon. Can't be done. Pitchers pitched every 4th day, not every 5th day. You had a greater chance of seeing those pitchers. Also, it was a badge of honor to pitch against the other star. You might pitch on short rest to face the other guy's top guy.
Hall of Fame pitcher Ferguson Jenkins.
I can recall pitching 3 games in a week sometimes, starting on Monday, again on Thursday, and again on Sunday. I knew I was going to face Bunning with the Phillies. I'd face Cincinnati, I might get Maloney. I'd face the Mets, I'd probably get Seaver. With the Cardinals, I knew I was going to get Bob Gibson. When the starter got the ball, the manager said, "Hey, you're out there for 9 innings, don't give it back. I don't want it back."
In the pitching-rich 60s, the complete game was a badge of honor. Durable starters like Juan Marichal would routinely finish 20 or 25 games in a single season, strengthening their arms by pitching batting practice when time permitted. Broadcaster Bob Costas.
I remember a game in 1963 where Juan Marichal hooked up with the then 42-year-old Warren Spahn. The game goes 16 innings. They each go the distance. And the Giants win it 1-0 on a Mays homer in the bottom of the 16th off Warren Spahn. I can say this with absolute certainty. You will not see a game like that for the next 100 years.
As pitchers became more dominant, winning 20 games became commonplace. Batting averages declined steadily in the 60s, reaching a low in 1968, when only one player in the American League hit more than 300. 68 was also the year Denny McLain won 31 games, and somehow wasn't even the best pitcher in baseball. Historian Dick Johnson.
Grab a bat, step in the box. Let me introduce you to Mr. Gibson. That withering look of just disdain and utter menace.
I had one thing in mind. I was winning the ball game.
Hall of Fame pitcher Bob Gibson.
Losing was not an option. Okay, here I am. It's going to be a battle. So let's go. The day that I had my good stuff, I wasn't concerned too much about anybody.
Catcher Tim McCarver.
He intimidated everybody. He intimidated his teammates. He intimidated his manager. He intimidated the pitching coach. And he intimidated the opposition, believe me. You could see it. You could feel it. Ferocity.
St. Louis Cardinal Dal Maxfield.
He was not a nice guy. On the day he pitched, he didn't talk to anybody. None of us talked to him. We knew better. Guys that didn't know him, or rookies that could join the ball club. "Hey, Bob, what's going on?" He'd just look at him and walk away. They'd go and say, "What's wrong with Gibson?" I say, "Oh, nothing. He's pitching today."
I was a jerk. on the days that I pitched. I was always bitching about the game being 2-1. How come I don't get 6 runs? Consequently, I was grumpy all the time. I used to aggravate Tim because he comes out to the mound and tell me there's a guy on second base, so watch him. Well, shit, I knew he was there. I put him there.
In the 60s, Gibson's intensity was common. Most of the era's successful pitchers often excelled through intimidation. St. Louis Cardinal Mike Shannon.
If you leaned over the plate and tried to protect the outside part of the plate, well, you had to pay the price for it, and the price was he was going to whistle one up around your ear.
Al Kaline.
You knew when you were going well, and if you happen to have a couple of big games against a team, you maybe get 3-4 hits, you knew that sooner or later they're going to drill you or knock you off the plate. I mean, that was just part of the game. We're going to shake you up a little bit and see how you hit when you get off your seat of your pants.
Catcher Jeff Torborg remembered that even the best, most confident hitters feared one pitcher more than any other.
Hitters would dig a hole and really get anchored with their back foot. Willie Mays dug in sometimes with both feet. And he looked up and he realized it was Drysdale. I don't think he was even thinking at the time. He called timeout and he filled up the hole. As if to say, I made a mistake. I didn't realize who was pitching. No. Down he went. Frank Robinson stood as close to home plate as you could stand, and when he would hook up with Drysdale, he would go down once or twice and at bat. And then he'd get back up and hit a bullet somewhere.
He hit me more than anyone else. He kept me going like a rocking chair. That night, I've always felt like I'd been wrestling a bear. I was so tired when I left the ballpark, but I respected him for the way he went about his job.
The pitcher who earned the most respect during the 60s was Sandy Koufax. Although his career ended prematurely after the 1966 season, Koufax was still the pitcher of the decade. In the decade of the pitcher, Jeff Torborg.
He had this very slow delivery that lulled the hitter to sleep. And then when he did let it go, it just rocketed through the top of the strike zone. And then he threw this curveball. This thing would break at least 2 feet. I could hear the seams on his curveball that was spinning so tightly. He got on top of the ball so much that if the mound were a little higher, the ball would go back to him. I mean, that is how tight his rotation was.
Hall of Famer Hank Aaron.
Threw very hard, was very intimidating, and knew how to finish a ball game. If you got him 2-1 in the 8th or 9th inning, somebody could call his wife and say, put dinner on because I'll be home soon. He was truly magnificent.
Pitcher Jim Kopp.
He played on teams that did not score a lot of runs. It seemed like every game he pitched was 2-1, 1-0. So every game he knew he had to pitch a shutout or hold the opposition to 1 run. That probably helped him in one way, and it probably helped shorten his career. Every pitch he threw was like the last out in the 9th inning.
Weary the years that have passed since then, who dreamed as the stardust fluttered down, of fame that fluttered beyond the years, of glory hooked to the sweep of cheers. Weary the years that have passed since then, faint the dreams in the lonesome den. The sullen tread of the crowd moves by, where stars are dim in a fading sky. Where is the glory that ruled the fray?
In the mid-1960s, injuries and age overtook Mickey Mantle. After more than a decade among baseball's elite, the Mick had become just an ordinary player. As New York Yankee executive Marty Appel remembers, Mantle's decline was especially painful to watch.
Power hitters see their skills diminish. They hit it just as hard as they used to, but now it's a long fly ball. It would embarrass them.
Yankee teammate Joe Pepitone.
He was like 0 for 20. He threw his helmet down. He said, that's it. I'm hurting everybody. It was sad. He just couldn't do what he wanted to do for the team anymore. And he started crying.
Writer Maury Allen.
He used to tell his story about having a dream, and he heard the crowd. and he couldn't get into the stadium. He would try to sneak in under the stands. It was the fear of the alternative. If I don't play baseball, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go?
Marty Appel.
He hung on and played so long because he just loved the game. He loved being around. He loved being a baseball player, the life. On his plaque at Yankee Stadium, it says he was a great teammate, which is a wonderful line. It was his own line. There wasn't a more charming guy in and around the game. He had a great laugh. He had a great sense of humor. And he had a great sense of self in the end because he knew that he was part of something really magical.
As Mickey faded, so did his Yankees. The team won its last pennant in 1964 and then began a swift fall through the standings. Within 2 seasons, the Yanks were a last-place team with dwindling fans. From Ruth to DiMaggio to Mantle to Horace Clarke. 40 years of continued excellence had ended. Baseball historian Dick Johnson.
They started to bottom out, and it was about time. What hath God wrought here? You know, he's paying attention now. He's a fan too. The Yankees suck. It was great.
Bob Costas.
Among other problems, the Yankees, like so many American League teams, were very slow to sign black and Hispanic players, and they paid for it.
The Yankees' racial intolerance could have been a product of their success. From 1947, the year of Jackie Robinson's debut, to 1964, New York appeared in 15 World Series in 18 years. But as writer Donald Honig suggests, there might have been a more malicious reason.
George Weiss had negative vibrations about black players. The very fact that the New York Yankees did not bring up the first black until 1955 speaks for itself. The Yankees could have gotten anybody they wanted. There was Willie Mays playing in the Negro League in Birmingham, any number of players. They could have had an outfield of Aaron, Mays, and Mantle if they wanted. They were available. I mean to say Yankee scouts didn't notice them? And when they did bring up Elston Howard, Weiss's comment was telltale. He's a good ball player and he's a gentleman. Since when did you have to be a gentleman to play in the major leagues? It seems to me that George Weiss might have been a bigot. It's as simple as that. As Tom Yawkey might well have been a bigot. I mean, how else do you explain these things?
Yawkey's Red Sox were the last major league organization to integrate. When they belatedly brought Pumpsy Green to Boston in 1959, the wait was costly. Like many other American League teams, Boston fell far behind the more aggressive National League, and the competitive damage would remain for years.
So what, he played in Milwaukee and Atlanta, where the mound was his warning track, and the fences drooped, or seemed to, when he zinged a liner that never climbed higher than a horse's head. In the field, he moved slowly, or seemed to. What is the word now? Deliberately getting there. Was always the tortoise whipping the hare. Check the records for luck. You'll find the numbers were all in his wrists.
Hall of Famer Hank Aaron.
We had to do better than our white teammates. You didn't have black ball players being utility players. Black ball players on the team, he was a regular. So we had to try harder. We had to play harder. But I think that you had more talent in the National League than you had in the American League simply because you had more blacks playing in the league.
Musician George Thorogood.
I would go to the Connie Mack Stadium and watch the Cincinnati Reds and just marvel at watching the black players. I look into Frank Robinson's face, Vada Pinson. They were serious people when they got on that field. And this is one of the few opportunities to excel for people of their race in this country. They meant business.
Baseball historian Dick Johnson.
The National League was like the Democratic Party The American League were like the Republicans. They were sort of the men in the gray flannel suits. The National League looked more like America. It was African American. It had a Spanish accent, hungrier hearts, and ultimately better baseball. It was just common sense. There was not as much a social movement as it was a move to win games.
The pioneer, of course, was Jackie Robinson, whose distinctive flair and dramatic playing style would, in time, become a trademark of the National League. Professor Michael Eric Dyson.
When they brought that kind of speed and power into the game, it revolutionized it. It gave it more energy, gave it a sense of inherent drama, and made it easier on the eye. The National League took on a different sense of savoir-faire, a different sense of presence. And so what you had with black ball players was a strengthening of the script of baseball. It popped off of the page, so to speak, and the eye was alit with the glories of their profound talent. It made it a different game. It made it not simply America's pastime in the white imagination. It allowed black people to have ownership over a game that historically had excluded them.
Frank Robinson.
It was just a tremendous era because when I used to play against the Braves, I used to want to compete against Hank. I didn't want Aaron to outdo me. So if Hank hit one, I wanted to hit one. If he hit two, I wanted to hit two. If he hit three, I wound up with two. That was a league identity. And when you played in the National League, you were the best league as far as you're concerned. You didn't want anything to do with the American League.
We thought that the American League was a place where old ball players went to die.
Bob Gibson.
We had a younger group of guys, and certainly we could look and see that there weren't that many black players over there, but we thought it was basically a retirement community.
In the 60s, the imbalance of black and Latin stars was so great that the National League dominated the All-Star game, losing just once the entire decade. Each year, black and Latin players monopolized nearly all of the National League's offensive categories. And yet, as writer Charles Einstein remembers, throughout the decade, there was one player whose skills consistently rose above the rest.
Candlestick Park, less than 2 out. And that man on third base would be tagged up. And the sound in that ballpark was indescribable. It was a growing roar of apprehension. Oh, I guess, and Willie would get the ball, oh, and then here came the throw. And it came on the fly. And it was an astonishing moment. People would remember that and tell their grandchildren. I saw this happen. You'll have your great violinists of all time, Yehud Emanuel and Isaac Stern, but then you have Heifetz. You had all your great baseball players. But then you had Mays.
Willie Mays came into the 1960s already one of the game's premier players. And then he got better. In the first 7 years of his second decade, Mays hit more homers and drove in more runs than any other comparable period of his career.
He was the most valuable player in 1954, and he won it in 1965. Nobody in history has ever gone 12 seasons apart and won most valuable at both ends of that. This was Peter Pan or somebody. This was the joy of youth that was just preserved and preserved and preserved.
Writer Donald Honig.
You couldn't take your eyes off Willie Mays on a ball field, and there was never a more alert ball player than Mays. His baseball playing IQ is comparable to Einstein's in physics.
Jeff Torborg.
Willie Mays was at third base when a little pop-up went behind second base, and Jimmy Lefevre catches the ball, and Mays makes a bluff fake toward home plate, and Lefevre and Mays both smile. As soon as Jimmy put his head down, off takes Willie for the plate. He could do everything to beat you, and do it with a flair, and do it with ease. I was a young player, and he picked up my bat, and I asked to have a picture taken with him. And he picked up my bat, and he put it up to his mouth. He said, "I clean my teeth with these."
Donald Honig.
You see him catching that ball in center field, just like he's absorbing it. It's like it was tossed to him from 3 feet away. He was just a marvelous baseball playing machine. And the fact that he did it with this carbonated personality, you just enjoyed what he was doing as much as you admired it.
You cannot say Willie Mays and be angry. It's impossible to do that. It's got a joy inside itself. Arbuthnot Fauntleroy? Is that the kind of a name you want for somebody who can do these things? No, you want Willie Mays.
It's very distinct at the ballpark. The players play ball. The umpires arbitrate. The groundskeepers manicure the grounds, watering the base paths with grave, sylph-like movements. The young Dominican pitcher surveys his outfield, vibrant green under the lights. Este es mi parque. The cheers of the patrons rain down on his deaf ears. At the ballpark, it's all very distinct.
Baseball executive Omar Minaya.
I was born in the Dominican Republic, and my parents migrated to the United States when I was 7 years old. The teams that I was introduced to were the teams that had a large amount of Latin players. In its own way, it has some type of social implication. It has some type of social attachment growing up in the inner cities, a sense of identification.
Although the inclusion of Latin players in the majors predated Jackie Robinson, by the 60s, when the first real Hispanic invasion occurred, Latin players were still struggling to survive. Author Roberto Echeverria.
They had to face the discrimination that black players continued to face in the 60s. But in addition, they had a huge problem because of the language and adaptation to a culture that is so different from ours.
Writer Samuel Regalado.
You're dark-colored, you don't speak any English, so there was that sense of alienation. Felipe Alou arrives to the United States. He has only a few dollars in his pocket. They put him on the bus. Every bus stop is segregated. One of the first words he learns in English is the word colored. He gets there, he has no idea where the streets are. He doesn't speak any English at all. He's tired, he's hungry. He went to sleep. He went to sleep on a park bench.
Frank Robinson.
I'm scared to death myself in the minor leagues, and my roommate and the only other black player on the club was a Cuban kid that spoke no English. And the only thing he knew was eggs and ham. That's all he ate.
Minnesota twin Tony Oliva.
I never left my family before. That was my first time. When I get here, I was so lonesome. I miss my family so much that many times went through my mind to go home.
Stereotyped and misunderstood, Latin players often received horrible treatment from others unwilling to accept a different culture. Writer Samuel Regalado.
They should be speaking English. Much of this, of course, is augmented by managers who begin to institute codes within the locker rooms by which the players can speak only English. It's a cultural insult. Cepeda explodes over the whole thing.
Charles Einstein.
Pagan was on third base and Cepeda was on second. They started jabbering at each other in Spanish. This irritated the Cincinnati pitcher. He turned to Cepeda, he says, "Can't you talk English?" Cepeda says, "Yeah, kiss my ass. Is that English enough for you?"
Although they came from different countries, the two best-known Hispanic stars of the 60s were strikingly similar. Roberto Echeverria.
Marichal and Clemente had an air of royalty about them, where it's not only how you perform, but the elegance with which you do it and the character that you project in doing so. The wind-up is part of the aura, a retention from bullfighting. He's all by himself in the middle of the diamond. It's a move that is not just functional. It is also a move that exudes elegance, artistry.
Hall of Fame pitcher Juan Marichal.
So many people come up to me and say, oh, I used to love that high kick. I used to try that, and I fall over. In my home or in the hotel room in front of the mirror, I have to practice the balance. I used to close my eyes and try to visualize, and I can see myself kicking the leg and throwing the ball.
Frank Robinson.
Marichal had 15 pitches. And people say, 15 pitches? That's right, 15 pitches. 5 pitches he could throw from 3 different angles. Over the top, 3/4, sidearm. Once in a while, I thought he threw a couple between his legs.
But of all the great Latin stars, it was Roberto Clemente who championed the Hispanic players' struggle for acceptance. Roberto Echeverria.
I was in awe of Clemente. What a player he was, and there was a certain controlled violence to the way that he ran around the bases. You have to display all of this the same way a rooster displays his beautiful tail. Honor and dignity.
Broadcast journalist Geraldo Rivera.
He played like a gazelle, a beautiful, graceful man, going from 0 to 60 in the blink of an eye. A guy who could combine suave smoothness with tremendous power. To have someone break through into mainstream culture with tremendous success and skill. Roberto Clemente is to Hispanic culture as important as Jackie Robinson to African American.
Here is the fancied green of our wishes. Here where I still think the ball players are older than I. This is where they are unreasonably adept. Where our failure is turned inside out by quick hands and an always white ball. I sit in section 9 and sometimes wonder why, but I know I am at ground zero, where art is made, where there is no profit, no loss. The planet lies perfect in its orbit.
For much of the 1960s, baseball was still our national pastime. The game very much a part of our daily routine. On the green fields of our childhood, we followed the game, played the game, lived the game. The sounds and smells of warm summer days always led to baseball. Bob Costas.
You could walk into the ballpark for any game and buy a very good ticket, a box seat at Yankee Stadium. I'm talking about right next to the dugout. Almost reach out and touch Mickey Mantle or Roger Maris. $3.50. $3.50. General admission, $1.50.
Baseball historian Dick Johnson.
Every year when the schedules were announced, you would scan the schedule to see when the doubleheaders were. We'd probably go to 2 or 3 a year, and they'd invariably be on a Sunday afternoon.
Writer Tom Boswell.
I loved to go to doubleheaders. I'd go an hour and a half before the game to watch batting practice. The games were so quick back then. There was a fear that the game would be over so fast that you wouldn't get enough baseball. You might see a 2-hour and 5-minute game. Would that be enough? The Indians are in town. I want to see the Indians. So the doubleheader really was an insurance that you would get enough baseball. When you're playing with a bat that's been taped up 3 times and you've driven nails through the handle of it to put it back together, and the whole neighborhood's only got 3 bats and 2 of them are broken, bat day's a big deal.
Broadcaster Howie Rose.
For some perverse reason, your identity as a human being depended upon whose bat you received at bat day. The first bat day I can remember at Shea Stadium that I went to was 1968, and I got a Jerry Buchek bat. The rest of the day, people were pointing at me going, Jerry Buchek, Jerry Buchek, when I had dreamed the night before of Ed Kranepool, Cleon Jones, or Ron Swoboda. I was forever Jerry Buchek.
Professor Michael Eric Dyson.
You identified with these players and you became them. I'm Bob Gibson today. Well, I'm Willie Stargell, and I'm going to swing my bat around 3 or 4 times in that complete circle. We all wanted to be these figures, and we fought over who that day could be Willie McCovey. And we really fought for that because it was a privilege to identify with them.
Actor Robert Wull.
If you were left-handed like I was and Jewish, you were Sandy Koufax. Everybody was Sandy Koufax.
Howie Rose.
Mickey Mantle had this shoulders hunched manner of running around the bases where he almost looked like Walter Brennan in The Real McCoys. I was, thank God, a perfectly healthy 10 or 11-year-old playing Little League in the mid-1960s, but whenever I had to run out a fly ball or even a base hit, I looked like Amos McCoy. I wanted so very badly to look even the slightest bit like Mickey Mantle. It looked neat, so we had to do it.
Bob Costas.
Pack of baseball cards cost a nickel. I never heard any kid offer another kid money for a card. I'll flip you for the card. I'll play you Knockalina for the card. I'll trade you for the card. I'll trade you 3 Norm Seaburns and 4 Bob Perkys for that Hank Aaron. Maybe, although that wasn't enough. They had emotional value. They were for keeping, for putting on the spokes of your bike to make a very cool noise while you rode down the street. But they had no value other than your attachment to baseball.
Robert Wull.
You had baseball cards on the spokes of your bike. Never the players you wanted, though. No one ever put a Yankee on the spokes of his bike. You had to be out of your mind to do that. That went for Ken Aspermani. That went for a Philly. You know, that went for a Kansas City A. But not for the Yankees.
Dick Johnson.
We had a couple of Yankee fans in my class in Worcester, and I don't know why. They probably had relatives in New York or New Jersey. I loved getting cards of Tom Tresh, who we used to call Tom Trash. I hated him. And I would take these cards, and I would hold them in front of these kids at recess, and I'd tear them into pieces. We'd flip them in the dirt. The Yankee cards, only the Yankee cards.
Bob Costas.
I know I can't prove this, and maybe the people at Topps would deny it, but I swear there were at least 11 Jerry Lumpies for every Willie Mays in these packs of cards. There'd be guys you'd get in triplicates and 5 times over, and you'd go through and you'd get Jerry Lumpy, Manny Jimenez, Bill Stafford, Eli Gerba, Barry Latman. A checklist. That was worthless. A checklist, just a list of all the guys you don't have yet. And then all of a sudden, popping up seemingly out of nowhere, almost like a neon sign. Wait a minute, is that Mickey? Yeah, Mickey Mantle right there in the middle of the pack. And as a bonus, you got that waxy piece of gum. And whatever card was resting against that gum would retain the film and the aroma of that gum for roughly 3 centuries. If you can find an Eli Gerba that was resting against that rectangular piece of gum today, you can still sense that gum on Eli Gerba's jersey. It's a frightening concept now that I think of it.
The last true pennant race in baseball took place in 1967. The Boston Red Sox battled 4 other teams and won the American League pennant on the last day of the season. The regular season would never again have such singular importance. Baseball soon added 4 more new teams, split each league into 2 divisions, and created a new round of playoffs. No longer did having the most wins in the league guarantee a team a place in the World Series. The game, however, carried on and kept its charm. In 1969, the New York Mets, a team that hadn't even existed at the beginning of the decade, won the last World Series of the 60s. It was an amazing feat that clearly defined the end of the era, and perhaps the end of the innocence. Writer Donald Honig.
The 60s, which began with 16 baseball teams, ended up with 24. Baseball became almost unrecognizable. It set the tone for future changes, future expansion, franchise hopping, the designated hitter.
Robert Wull.
You had 4 or 5 really ugly stadiums being built at the same time. One of them was worse than the other. They were all cookie cutters. They all had artificial turf. These stadiums sucked.
But for baseball, the real revolution was yet to come. In 1970, Curt Flood boldly challenged baseball's reserve clause, and soon players were able to move freely from team to team for the highest price. Free agency not only changed the game, it also changed the way Americans felt about the game. Over time, team loyalty faded, and the emotional bond between players and fans began to slowly erode away. For more than half a century, baseball commanded our attention like no other sport. It was our game, a national obsession. As we moved out of the 60s, baseball entered a new and different time. A time far removed from its romantic past, when it was a game.
Game called. Across the field of play, the dusk has come, the hour is late. The fight is done, and lost or won. The player files out through the gate. The tumult dies. The cheer is hushed. The park is still. But through the night, there shines the light of home beyond the silent hill.
Game called where in the golden light the bugle rolled the reveille. The shadows creep where night falls deep, and taps has called the end of play. The game is done, the score is in. The final cheer and jeer have passed. But in the night beyond the fight, the player finds his rest at last.
Game called. Upon the field of life, the darkness gathers far and wide. The dream is done. The score is spun that stands forever in the guide. Nor victory, nor yet defeat, is chalked against the player's name. But down the roll, the final scroll shows only how he played the game.